When my boss called me into her office, I thought it was about work. But when I walked in, her best friend was waiting there too. And what started as a simple meeting turned into a night I'll never forget. I still remember the way her message came through, short, polite, and formal, just like her. Could you stop by my office this afternoon? There's something I'd like to discuss. Nothing unusual about that, except something in the wording felt different. Not urgent, not pressing, just personal somehow. My boss had always been composed, always a little distant, the kind of woman you respected without question. She carried herself with a quiet elegance that made you straighten your posture the moment she walked into the room. So, when I stood outside her office door, I found myself adjusting my shirt collar, taking one last steadying breath before knocking. Her voice called out, calm as ever. Come in. The moment I stepped inside, though, I froze. She wasn't alone. There, sitting comfortably in one of the leather chairs opposite her desk, was another woman. She looked to be around the same age as my boss, early 40s, perhaps, but with a different kind of presence. While my boss's confidence came wrapped in tailored suits and crisp lines, this woman had a softer grace. Her hair fell freely over her shoulders, and when she glanced up at me, there was curiosity in her smile, as though she had already been expecting me. Ah, my boss said, standing from her chair with that effortless authority she carried. This is my friend. She gave her name, and I found myself repeating it silently, committing it to memory without meaning to. The friend leaned forward slightly, extending her hand. Nice to finally meet you. Her voice was warm, with the faintest hint of playfulness tucked beneath the politeness. I shook her hand carefully, aware of how small the office suddenly felt, how close her gaze lingered when our palms touched. I sat down, trying to steady myself. The chair creaked quietly beneath me, the air faint with the scent of polished wood and something subtler, perfume, I realized, not just from my boss, but from her friend too. Two different notes blending together in the room. As I settled in, I noticed the way my boss watched me. Not impatiently, not critically, but almost as though she were measuring my reaction. It was unusual. She never studied me like that during our usual meetings. I tried to focus on my breathing, on the small details, the faint clink of porcelain as the friend set down her coffee cup, the muted hum of the city outside the window, the way my palms rested against my knees, already damp with nervousness. Two women, both striking in their own way, both focused on me. And though I told myself this was just another meeting, something in my chest whispered otherwise. Something had shifted the second I stepped into that room. I couldn't yet name it, but I felt it. The silence that followed my entrance didn't last long. My boss, always in control, smoothed it over with a tone that was formal yet touched by something softer. This is one of my oldest friends, she said, glancing at the woman beside her with a look that wasn't the usual polished professionalism, but familiarity. A kind of warmth that came from years of history. Her friend smiled, and it wasn't the kind of polite smile you flash out of courtesy. It was open, genuine, the kind that immediately eases a room. I've heard plenty about you, she said, eyes meeting mine in a way that almost made me shift in my seat. I laughed lightly, more out of nervousness than humor. Hopefully good things. That earned me the first real crack in my boss's professional armor. She didn't laugh, not exactly, but her lips tugged into the faintest smile, as though she couldn't help it. Seeing that smile, rare and fleeting, made my chest tighten. Her friend, though, chuckled. Mostly good. Maybe a little too good. I was curious to see for myself. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just gave a small nod. It was safer that way. The conversation shifted from introductions to lighter topics, travel, books, even a few offhand jokes about my age compared to theirs. But instead of feeling left out, I found myself drawn in. The two women had a rhythm between them, my boss with her sharp wit, her friend with an easy, teasing warmth that softened the edges. I realized, as they spoke, how rare it was to see my boss like this, leaning back slightly in her chair, her eyes bright in a way that meetings never revealed. It felt like I was being invited into a side of her life she usually kept locked away. At one point, her friend leaned forward to pass me a cup of coffee she had poured. Our fingers brushed, just lightly. It should have been nothing, a small accident. But the warmth of her touch lingered longer than it should have, a soft spark that made me grip the cup a little tighter than necessary. Thank you, I murmured. She tilted her head, studying me with quiet amusement. Of course. Meanwhile, my boss was watching, not in judgment, but as though she was noticing something too. And when our eyes met, I felt the weight of that gaze, steady and unspoken, before she looked away again. The office itself seemed to shift with the mood. Afternoon sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting thin stripes of gold across the desk. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, catching the light whenever one of us moved. The hum of the city outside faded into the background, leaving the space oddly insulated, as though the world beyond the walls had paused just long enough for this moment to take shape. By the time my coffee cooled, I realized I wasn't thinking about work anymore. I was thinking about how I felt sitting there, about the rare smile on my boss's lips, the lingering warmth of her friend's hand, and the strange certainty that this meeting wasn't as simple as it seemed. At first, I tried to remind myself that this was still a meeting. There was paperwork on the desk, after all, and a notebook open in front of my boss, her handwriting neat and precise. But whatever professional purpose had brought me here seemed to fade beneath the weight of something else. The conversation had shifted. It wasn't about numbers or deadlines anymore. Instead, they began asking me questions that dug beneath the surface. Questions about what I wanted for myself, about my goals, about why I had chosen the path I was on. I hadn't expected to be so honest. Normally, I kept my guard up, especially at work. But there was something about the way the two of them listened, not interrupting, not judging, that made the words come easier than I thought they would. I guess, I admitted slowly, I'm still trying to figure out where I belong. What matters to me? I don't have all the answers yet. The friend tilted her head, her eyes soft, almost maternal, but not quite. That's brave, you know. Most people your age try to act like they have everything figured out. I felt my cheeks warm, though I couldn't explain why her words struck me so deeply. Maybe it was the sincerity in her tone. Maybe it was the way her gaze didn't waver. My boss leaned back slightly in her chair, her expression unreadable at first. Then, after a pause, she said quietly, "There's nothing wrong with not having it all figured out. Some of us still don't." Her voice had softened on those last words, carrying something personal she hadn't intended to reveal. And for a moment, the air between us shifted. I looked at her, and she looked back, and it felt like time slowed. Her eyes were darker in the late afternoon light, steady but vulnerable in a way that unsettled me. The silence stretched. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say, but I didn't want to break it either. Then her friend cleared her throat lightly, as if rescuing us both. She smiled at me, tapping her fingers idly on the armrest of her chair. "Tell me about something that excites you, something that makes your eyes light up." The question caught me off guard, but I found myself answering anyway, talking about things that mattered to me. Music, travel, the desire to create something meaningful. And as I spoke, I could feel both of their gazes on me. The friend's, warm and encouraging. My boss's, steady and intense, as though she was searching for something in my words. Every so often, I caught one of them watching me a moment too long. The kind of glance that lingers, that suggests curiosity tinged with something deeper. I shifted in my seat, my knee brushing the edge of the desk. The contact grounded me, reminding me that this was real, not some dream. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that the rules had already changed. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a meeting anymore. I didn't notice how late it was getting until the office outside had gone quiet. The hum of printers, the ringing of phones, all of it had faded into silence. Only the soft amber glow of the desk lamp lit the room now, casting long shadows across the bookshelves. I glanced at the clock on the wall and blinked. Hours had passed, yet none of us had moved to end the evening. The friend leaned back in her chair, a mischievous smile playing at her lips. "You know," she said, "this place feels far too stiff." I came prepared. She reached into the bag she had set by her chair and, to my surprise, pulled out a slim bottle of wine and 3 small glasses wrapped in a napkin. My boss groaned softly, shaking her head. "You're impossible," she muttered, though her lips curved upward in a smile that seemed more affectionate than annoyed. "Impossible," her friend corrected cheerfully, "but necessary." Before I knew it, the glasses were filled, the faint aroma of red wine drifting through the room. I hesitated at first. This was my boss's office, after all. But when she finally took her own glass with a quiet sigh, I followed. The first sip was smooth, warming, loosening something tight inside my chest. The conversation shifted along with it. We laughed, really laughed, about small things. Stories from their past, silly anecdotes about coworkers I barely knew. The sharp edge of formality softened into something easier, freer. But laughter soon gave way to quieter tones. My boss sat with her elbow resting on the desk, her glass cradled loosely in her hand. She was telling a story about a decision she regretted, not in work, but in life. A relationship she had walked away from because she was too afraid to admit what she wanted at the time. Her voice grew quieter near the end, and her eyes drifted to the window, as if she wasn't sure if she should have shared that much. Her friend reached out, touching her wrist gently, a gesture that was both comforting and familiar. "You've always been too hard on yourself," she murmured. I sat there, not speaking, just listening. And in that moment, I felt like I was witnessing something I wasn't supposed to see. The softer, hidden side of a woman I had only ever known as unshakable. When her eyes flicked back to mine, there was a trace of vulnerability there. It caught me off guard. I didn't look away. For a heartbeat, silence stretched across the room. Only the faint hum of the city outside broke it. Then she smiled, just slightly. "You're quieter than I expected," she said, her voice steady again. I swallowed. "I'm just taking it all in." The friend chuckled softly, refilling our glasses. "Good answer." Under the desk, my knee brushed lightly against hers. Neither of us moved it away. And that simple, accidental touch said more than any of us dared to put into words. The night had grown heavier, the kind of stillness that makes every sound sharper. The wine glasses sat nearly empty now, forgotten on the edge of the desk. Laughter had faded, replaced by long pauses where no one rushed to fill the silence. I could feel it, a shift in the air. Subtle, but undeniable. My boss leaned back slightly, setting her glass down with deliberate care. She exhaled, almost as though she'd been holding her breath all evening. Then, without looking at me directly, she said, "Thank you for being so open tonight. I didn't expect that." Her words surprised me. Gratitude wasn't something she often expressed, at least not like this. And then, as if guided by some quiet impulse, her hand reached across the desk and found mine. It wasn't a firm grip, just the soft press of her fingers against my knuckles. But the contact was enough to still every thought in my head. Her touch was warm, steady. I felt my pulse leap beneath it. I glanced up, meeting her eyes. They were steady now, not vulnerable as before, but deliberate, as though she wanted me to understand something without saying it out loud. Her friend noticed. She had been watching the exchange, her lips curling into a knowing, almost protective smile. Instead of interrupting, she leaned back in her chair, folding her hands in her lap, as though giving space without withdrawing. That quiet approval, unspoken but present, only deepened the weight of the moment. The silence grew thick. The only sound was the ticking of the office clock, each second echoing louder than the last. My heart matched its rhythm, unsteady but insistent. I should have said something, anything, but my voice caught in my throat. Her thumb brushed lightly across the back of my hand. Such a small gesture, yet it carried a tenderness that left me breathless. It wasn't bold, wasn't reckless. It was careful, a choice. Her friend's sigh broke the stillness, gentle and soft. "You've always needed someone to really listen to you," she said, her tone directed more toward my boss than me. Something unspoken passed between the two women then, an understanding I couldn't quite name. But I felt caught in it, drawn closer by the way they included me in the silence, in the softness. I realized I was holding my breath. My boss finally let go, her fingers slipping away slowly, deliberately, as if reluctant to release the moment. The absence of her touch sent a hollow ache through my chest, sharper than I expected. But then she spoke, her voice low. "I shouldn't," she stopped herself, shaking her head slightly. Yet even as she tried to put distance between us, her eyes lingered on mine, betraying what her words wouldn't admit. The friend leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, her eyes warm but steady. "Maybe you should stop thinking so hard about what you shouldn't." The clock ticked again, louder somehow. And in that fragile quiet, I understood, this was no longer a simple evening. It had become something else entirely. The quiet in the office had grown heavier than before, thick with unspoken meaning. The clock ticked on, steady and unbothered, while my thoughts raced in 100 directions. Part of me wanted to retreat, to laugh it all off, To pretend the soft press of her hand on mine had been nothing but a fleeting kindness. That would have been safer, cleaner. But another part of me, the part still buzzing from the warmth of her touch, couldn't ignore it. My boss drew in a slow breath. Her fingers curled loosely around the stem of her glass, though she didn't drink from it. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, stripped of the polished composure she always carried. "I should tell you the truth," she said, her eyes flicking toward me, then away again. "I didn't ask you here tonight just to talk about work." My chest tightened. The air seemed thinner suddenly. She hesitated, as though the next words cost her something. "I wanted you to meet her." She gestured toward her friend, who had been watching quietly. "Because she's someone I trust. And I've spoken about you more than I probably should." Her friend's smile was gentle now, lacking the earlier playfulness. "She wasn't exaggerating," she said softly. "I wanted to see what she saw." The weight of their honesty left me still, almost breathless. A dozen questions fought for space in my head, but only one managed to escape. "And what did she see?" My boss finally looked at me, straight on. For the first time all night, she didn't hide behind a careful expression. Her eyes were open, unguarded, and the vulnerability there shook me more than I could say. "Someone different," she admitted. "Someone who listens, who notices things. You make me feel." She stopped, pressing her lips together before finishing in a whisper, "Seen." The word echoed through me. Seen. It struck deeper than a compliment, deeper than attraction. It was raw, honest, and it left me reeling. Her friend reached across the space between us, resting a hand gently on my shoulder. Her touch was light, grounding. "She needed to say that out loud," she murmured. "And maybe you did too." I swallowed hard, my voice unsteady when it finally came. "I feel something too, more than I've wanted to admit." The confession hung in the air, fragile but real. Neither of them spoke at first. My boss's hand tightened around her glass, though she didn't drink. Her friend's thumb brushed my shoulder once, a small gesture of reassurance, before she withdrew. Finally, my boss let out a shaky breath, her composure unraveling in small cracks I'd never seen before. "Do you have any idea how complicated this is?" I nodded. "Yes, but that doesn't change what's here." The silence that followed wasn't empty this time. It was full of fear, of longing, of possibility. For the first time all night, none of us looked away. For a while, none of us spoke. The air was thick with everything we'd just admitted, the words we had said, and the ones still hanging unspoken between us. I could feel my pulse in my throat, steady but hard, as though my own body was urging me not to break the moment. My boss was the one to finally move. She set her glass down slowly, carefully, as if even the smallest clink against the desk might shatter the fragile calm. Then she lifted her eyes to mine. They were steady, but softer than I had ever seen them, touched with something that was neither purely professional nor purely vulnerable, but something in between. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice catching just slightly on the words. "For being honest. For respecting this moment, even if it's complicated." Her hand reached across the desk again, tentative at first, until it found mine. This time, there was no hesitation. Her fingers closed around mine, warm and certain, and I let my palm relax into her touch. Her friend shifted beside her, not intruding, just watching with a faint smile that carried both affection and approval. She leaned forward then, placing a light kiss on my cheek. It was brief, gentle, but it left a warmth blooming under my skin, a reminder of the intimacy we had all shared tonight. "You're good for her," she said softly, her voice meant for me, but her eyes lingering on her friend. "Don't forget that." My boss's lips curved into a small smile, tired, a little nervous, but real. "We'll figure this out," she said, almost more to herself than to me. "Whatever this is, it doesn't have to be defined right now." And strangely, I found comfort in that. There was no rush, no need to force words like future or commitment. What mattered was the honesty we had found in the quiet, the vulnerability none of us had expected to share. When the evening finally came to a natural close, we didn't treat it like an ending. My boss stood, smoothing the lines of her skirt, and her friend gathered the empty glasses with a content little sigh. I followed them to the door, the soft click of my shoes on the floor echoing in the stillness of the office. Outside, the night air was cool against my face, carrying the faint scent of rain. The city lights glowed in the distance, blurred and hazy, as though the whole world had softened just for us. We walked together for a few steps, the three of us. My boss's arm brushed against mine now and then, a quiet reassurance. Her friend's laughter, low and easy, carried into the night. When we finally parted ways, there was no dramatic goodbye. Just a lingering look from my boss, her hand squeezing mine one last time before letting go, and the friend's gentle smile as she pressed my shoulder in farewell. I walked away with an ache in my chest, not of loss, but of something new beginning. That evening had started with an unexpected invitation into an office, but it ended with something far greater. The feeling of being seen, of being welcomed into a world I hadn't known I belonged to. And though I couldn't name exactly what it was, I knew one thing for certain. It wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.